Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around fantasy Premier League. My name's Such.
And my name is James.
T minus 4 days and counting, James, till kickoff, getting closer, seeing much more around final drafts and all that kind of stuff. You know what people love more than anything else, though? Potato wedges.
Curly fries.
Curly fries. I like curly fries more than anything else. Then I like skinny ones. And then I'm a sweet potato and all that other jazz. But chips it is, yes. Chips. It's for the engaged managers, possibly up there as one of the most exciting or interesting parts of the game. And when it goes well, you do feel like a king. And when it doesn't go well, oh well, whatever. But yes, we do have a conversation to be had about chips. Very different season, as has been alluded to quite a lot with the changes in the Champions League and the way that the fixtures are going to be and the blanks and doubles and all that kind of stuff. But for a lot of people, they won't know what that impact is. You obviously have alluded to the fact that you're bench boosting in game week 1.
Don't lock me. Don't lock me to
No,
that.
I'm not
In
you,
case
I said alluded to. So obviously, people will be interested in knowing why and what they are going to do with their chips. So we still got first half of the season wildcard, second half of the season wildcard, bench boost, free hit, triple captain, and mystery chip for second half of the season. So
the mystery.
We do have an additional chip this year that we haven't had in previous years.
We will mention the mystery chip a little bit. We obviously don't know what it is, but I think it would be worth speculating a little bit because it has to be used in the second half of the season, and we should remember that. He said we'll find out in December, and it will be available for use from January, right? So, clearly, this is not going to be something that you can use in the first half of the season, i.e., before your first wild card. So there is potentially an additional chip on top of what we'd normally have, and a lot of the FPL strategists would ordinarily leave perhaps their free hit, triple captain, and bench boost to later in the season because of the increased number of doubles and blanks. We spoke earlier about different types of chips, Such I think we could probably take chunky chips off the menu because from a double and blank perspective, this is no longer chunky chips. And this is much easier and more straightforward to potentially understand than it has been in the past. And there's
I guess what you mean by chunky is trying to look for 22 fixtures, i.e. 11 players with doubles, or 30 fixtures, 15 players with doubles for bench boost, that kind of thing.
Well, I think in the past we could look at weeks and we could say, right, the FA Cup quarterfinals is clearly going to be the big splank of the season, without question, right? And then from that we could say, well, it's one of two will be the biggest double, but it's highly likely to be this one. The massive change this year is that FA Cup quarterfinals are a standalone. They do not clash with Premier League competition. So that's a potential 8 blanks that we could have potentially had in field, 8 fixtures postponed. It's never normally that high, but 8 fixtures that could have been postponed during the course of the season because the FA Cup now won't be. That is taking potentially a lot away from what you'd want to do with a bench boost, etc. In theory, as it stands right now, there shouldn't be more than 6 games postponed during the season. And when we say postponed, we mean move to a different game week. There is a possible, perhaps it could become 8 if you include the FA Cup final as well. And that's a little bit maybe dependent on who's in it, which we'll discuss a little bit. So a maximum of 8 fixtures, basically. Those boil down to 2 games could be postponed in game week 29 because of a clash with the Carabao Cup final. 4 games could be postponed in game week 34 for the FA Cup semi-finals, and 2 games could be postponed in game week 37 because of a clash with an FA Cup final. In the case of the game week,
I'm being a bit dim and slow here because I've got your spreadsheet in front of me. So yeah, Carabao Cup final, game week 29. I get that. 2 games. You said game week 34 is the next potential clash?
Yeah, it could be 4 games postponed for the FA Cup semi-finals.
Yeah, 4 teams. I'll make that, and
And
then so
and two.
that's 6 games, and
No, what are
then
you talking
potentially
about?
2.
Oh, six
No,
altogether.
2 plus 4. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
tallying up. That was your 6 that could be, and
Yeah.
then
And then
FA
another
Cup
two
final.
37 for the FA Cup final. But what changes from the FA Cup final in 37 is probably going to stay in the same week.
Mm.
It will just get moved to the midweek. That's what happened a couple of years ago. Chelsea Liverpool was the FA Cup final, and their fixtures were moved to the midweek afterwards. So they stayed part of game week 37. So a game could get moved from the weekend and stay within the same game week. That is definitely impossible in game week 29 for the Carabao Cup final because it's an international break afterwards. So it's literally impossible. Game week 34 is unlikely because there's European games afterwards, but it is at the semi-final stage, particularly maybe if it's 2 clubs not involved in Europe. Could it just stay in the same week? Yes, possibly, but the week before is open as covered. So I think what we want to do here is try and just give you an understanding of what can happen later in the season. I could go through all my projections and show you what I project currently, but I don't think it's worthwhile. The reason for that being is at the moment, were I to do a projection for the 2 cup competitions, we're going to land with the same final in both competitions, right? Manchester City against
Yep.
Arsenal. Now,
Is
the
it? I
chance
thought it was West Ham Spurs. I thought we were going all the way, both of us.
in some sort of dream world, I don't think so, Such. So, look, could City and Arsenal be the 2 cup finals? Well, we had that with, I think, City and Liverpool before, maybe
Yeah.
oh, no, Chelsea and Liverpool, wasn't it?
No, Chelsea,
Yeah,
Liverpool.
Chelsea and Liverpool were both cup finals a couple of years ago. So, look, it can happen, but that doesn't necessarily give you the right model of kind of projection of what will land where later, because it could be that it's Arsenal City in one final and perhaps Liverpool and Chelsea in a different final, and that creates different outcomes for what games can go well. Few key points to point out firstly. So Carabao Cup final was said game week 29. Now, you could get 2 championship teams in the final and therefore no games get postponed. It's not a certainty to be a blank game week. But the last time that happened was a very, 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 very long time ago. That is unlikely. You could, of course, get 2 teams in the final who are due to play each other in the Premier League, and therefore there's
And
only
one
one
postponed.
game postponed, or there's a championship team makes it to the final.
Yeah.
But we're liable to
Or I
have.
mean, yeah, to be honest, it's not a situation where 2 teams in the final, the teams that they were playing could play each other, because we wouldn't maybe necessarily have that as a postponement previously, because there should be no postponements up until that point, right? So they can't rejig the fixtures to try and figure out another postponement. I suppose we would at that point know what the quarterfinals of the cup are, but that's not going to create a postponement, is it? So yeah, I see what you mean. It'd be 2, 1 or none. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's assume it's just 2 games postponed. Okay. Or even just 1. Doesn't
Most
matter.
likely scenario is 2. Yeah.
My question to you in the first instance, and you're looking at one of the sheets from my planner at the moment, and for those on YouTube, you'll see a graphic of kind of the lay of the land for the second half of the season at the moment. My question to you, Suj, would be any postponement in game week 29, where do you think it goes?
Midweek 33.
I would say that that's probably correct.
Okay.
That's
good.
the most likely scenario.
Nice to know your spreadsheet's easy to interpret for a Luddite like me.
There are 2 completely free game weeks left open, as in midweeks. There's no European football, no fixtures planned. Those are after game weeks 33 and 36. There are blanks in the schedule, which is meant to be designed for fixtures if they need to be rearranged to go into them. Okay.
And 37 is blank, right? Really?
Not quite. So
okay.
It is and it isn't. Okay, I think that's fair enough. So the 29 Carabao Cup final goes into probably 33. Okay, that's fine. So the following weekend, game week 34, is the FA Cup semi-finals. So you could have 4 games postponed from there. My question to you on that, Suj, would be, where do you think those postponed FA Cup semi-finals would go?
36.
I'd say there's every chance that you're possibly right. Yeah. Move the 29 postponement to 33. Move to 34 postponement to 36. We'll come back to the consequence of that possibility in a second. So the FA Cup final, if there's postponements there, where do you think they go?
Midweek of the same week, 37.
Okay. I think there's every possibility. Now I'm going to reframe that question. And I want you to imagine that Manchester United have got to the Carabao Cup final. Okay. Manchester United in game week 29 are due to play Leicester away. where do you think that fixture would get moved to if it was postponed?
I now need to see who Man United are playing in 33. They
It
are
does.
playing Wolves. Why would that change if the
Okay.
fact that it's Man United?
Okay. This is the right answer. So do you think it's the same answer? Yes.
I would suggest so. I don't see
Okay.
anything that would make me think that it wouldn't be that
So,
week.
okay, that's fine. So we'll move Leicester against Manchester United to game week 33. Would give Manchester United a double game week of Wolves at home and Leicester away. Now let's imagine that Manchester United have made the FA Cup semi-final. They're away to Bournemouth. Where does that fixture go?
36. So West Ham
Okay,
at home,
so
Bournemouth away.
now we got a scenario in game week 33 where Manchester United are at home to Wolves and away to Leicester in a double, but then will blank straight afterwards in game week 34. And now they would have a game week 36 double of West Ham at home and Bournemouth away. They've also won their FA Cup semi-final, Such. So their fixture at Chelsea in game week 37 would be postponed. They've also made the Europa League final. Where does this fixture go?
They'd bring forward the Chelsea game, maybe. Yeah, it could get tricky. I mean, Man United ain't getting there, are they? But anyway,
Okay, I get what you're saying.
there's plenty of times Premier League hit and hope, don't they?
I get it. People want to know what the possibilities of what can happen here. And this is why I raised this one. So the difference between, and there's two teams that need factoring into this. I mentioned Manchester United because I know if I'd mentioned Tottenham, people would specifically laugh at me. But the Europa League final is after game week 37 and before game week 38. So in the circumstance where Manchester United or Tottenham got to the FA Cup final and Europa League final, then quite clearly they're not going to play in the midweek at 37. They'd blank in 37, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Surely.
you think they
Surely.
what if you're in the FA Cup final and no, if you're in the Europa League final?
Yes. You would have to bring the fixture forward to 36, wouldn't you?
Do you think they would give you the weekend before the final off?
The weekend. Well,
Before
what I'm
the
saying is
final, for the Europa League
if
final.
Manchester United, let's just use Manchester United as an example. If Manchester United are in the FA Cup final and Europa League final, it's not that implausible, Serge. Then they'd have to blank in 37, surely.
Yeah, 100%.
So you'd bring the fixture forward with Chelsea to 36, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I think you would bring the 34 fixture against Bournemouth forward to 33. Now you've got nowhere if they're in the Carabao Cup final for that Leicester fixture to go. This is important because the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg is a little bit later than it would normally be, and so too is the Carabao Cup final. That game week 29 is the weekend before the March international break, which is normally when the FA Cup quarterfinals are. The FA Cup quarterfinals are actually the weekend after the international break, and then there's Premier League fixtures on the midweek after. Now, one argument could be here, Suj, that if Leicester and Manchester United are both out the FA Cup, you could move that fixture to the FA Cup quarterfinal. But as we've already ascertained, Manchester United are still in the FA Cup. But in terms of where a fixture could move, yes, there is a possibility that even the Carabao Cup final, I said it was impossible for it to stay in 29. Actually, it's not, because the fixture could be played 2 weeks later on the weekend of the FA Cup quarterfinals, and therefore it would still be game week 29. Game week 29 could go on for 2 weeks and yet not be a double or a single. Does that make sense?
Yes, if the teams that are in the Carabao Cup final are not in the FA Cup quarterfinal.
But also, if they're not in the FA Cup, then there's no need to force it in there because you can use one of them blank midweeks at a different time.
But it
right?
does feel like it's a very slim chance. This 5-7%, something like that.
More the point is there is a potential backlog of fixture problem for Manchester United and Tottenham because of their involvement in the Europa League that doesn't exist for the other clubs in Europe because of the scheduling of the Europa League final. So, should Manchester United or Tottenham get to the Carabao Cup final and still be in the FA Cup in Europe, it creates a problem earlier in the season. Now, that problem could be quite early, and I'd suggest this will probably be the case. So, the Carabao Cup semi-final is second leg is after game week 24, which is before the playoff round of European competition. That playoff round exists this year for the different format of the European competitions, where those finishing between 9th and 23rd will end up having a playoff round. Those who finish in the top 8 will jump the round and go directly to the last 16. So, in the passage, we've had the Champions League last 16 spread over 4 midweeks.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had a Man City were in the Carabao Cup final, you kind of always knew that the fixture was going to drop in one of those weeks where City didn't have the European fixture, right? Off the table now. And the reason I think it's off the table is it's semi-final second leg midweek, and then the next 2 following midweeks are the playoff round. So if you have a team that's got through to the Carabao Cup final, to bring the fixture forward to that period, you're doing it at less than 2 weeks' notice.
Okay.
Do we think that's likely?
I mean, it's going to be one of the European teams. The European teams are most likely to get to the Carabao Cup final. So whether the European teams being in the Carabao Cup final is likely, whether they bring it forward and give you less than 2 weeks' notice, knowing the Premier League, probably. But I'd say 40%, 35, 40%. But I suppose they'd have a feel for how everybody else is doing within the cup. I do think the Premier League hit and hope a little bit that things will work out for them by people getting knocked out of cups and
100%. 100%. There's been a couple in recent years. In the COVID season, they backed themselves into a corner so badly with Chelsea when Chelsea played in the Club World Cup that they needed, and that was the year Chelsea and Liverpool played the 2 cup finals. And Chelsea also got to, I want to say, the Champions League quarterfinals. I think if they'd have got to the semi-finals, they were up the creek and they'd have had to have a treble game week. So that eventuality can happen. What you got to remember is at the point that, let's say, Manchester United know they've reached the Carabao Cup final, it's only late January. So the chances are they are still in the FA Cup, and the chances are they are still in Europe. So at this point, you've got to foresee the problem of what could happen in the same way. Remember, a couple of years ago, we had that Leeds fixture. Do you remember it was provisionally announced to go on 4th round replay midweek if the 2 teams didn't have a 4th round replay? And that was when many of us triple captained Marcus Rashford in Manchester United's 2 fixtures against Crystal Palace and Leeds when he was on that hot streak a couple of years ago. So what I'm saying is there is a small possibility, I think, in the case with Manchester United and Tottenham, should they finish in the top 8 in Europe and get to the Carabao Cup final, you might suddenly have a double game week in game week 25 land really, really quickly. Look who Tottenham and Manchester United are playing in game week 25.
They are playing each other.
Coincidence. That's not done intentionally, by the way. That's just the way it's worked out.
Yeah.
So whatever you'd have for Tottenham, Manchester United, Tottenham's away fixture the date of the Carabao Cup final, for the record, is Fulham away. There is a small possibility that could become a double game week. Now, at that point, are you using your triple captaincy there? If it's, say, Tottenham, Man United at home and Fulham away, or Manchester United, Tottenham away and Leicester away, in that very unique and unlikely circumstance?
I think it's so far away and there's so much to learn. Like, say Dominic Solanke fits like a glove for you guys and you're playing attacking football. I wouldn't have any fear doing that with him, for example. With Manchester United, it'd be a lot harder for me right here, right now, to say I'm going to triple captain one of their players. But if it was an attacking Spurs asset, I could see myself doing it. The caveat I'm going to add, or like maybe the wider context though, is there's no, which other game weeks am I going to use these chips in? Because it comes down to then by default, it's not that that's necessarily the best game week for triple captain, but it's the best game week for triple captain if I'm going to use my bench boost in that week, free hit in that week, mystery chip in that week. Therefore, it defaults to the only other option where I've got a double game week to captain a player. So I could see myself triple captaining a Spurs attacking asset. Manchester United, nah, possibly, but
I think it's probably a no. But if you've got to this point and still have all your chips intact, and who knows what the mystery chip is going to be at the moment, right? Then you might deem the first opportunity. We often deem this the first good opportunity with a double game week to triple captain a player often gets taken. That Marcus Rashford example a couple of years ago is a perfect example of that, where you've got a good team on a good run, got a double game week, get it done, because I'm probably going to use the bench boost or something else in the bigger weeks. I wouldn't stress about that too much. I'm just saying there is a minor possibility of something in late January, early February, where you could get a double, I think only featuring one of Tottenham or Manchester United. Because let's use the more likely example of Manchester City. I think what would probably happen is what you said. And without worrying about the fixtures at this moment in time, let me just break it down as the most likely scenario here would be if City got to all cup finals, blank 29, double 33, blank 34, double 36. FA Cup final fixture moves to the midweek afterwards and stays a single fixture in 37. Now, if you've got a period here, and that's not impossible to foresee, where City have got double 33, blank 34, and double 36, and they're going for the title, which probably will be subject to 115, then there's every chance you're going to want chips around that period. It does still exist.
They've got a great run in, if you look at it. The postponed fixture would be, where are we? The semi-final postponed fixture with Villa, but you're talking about Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth, Fulham as the run-in, and that's where your doubles are going to be. We're adding Aston Villa into it. Yeah, that's interesting. The quarterfinal, yeah, they're interesting. They're interesting. They've got a good run-in. So,
what did we say was most amount of fixtures could get postponed? 8.
8 in total, and likely 4 in a single week. 4 additional fixtures.
The most you could
36.
get, the most you could get, and this is obviously doesn't include unforeseen circumstances like weather and serious people passing away and stuff like that. But I think the most maximum you could possibly get in a game week under this is 6 fixtures added to one game week. And I think the chances of that are so minute. So minute. So that would give you...
It clearly means that 36 is the biggest double on paper right now. If you said to me, what's the biggest double? 36 is likely to be the biggest double.
I'm not sure, Suj. I'm not sure.
What's the alternative?
Well, I think it might be a little bit dependent on what's to say that this wouldn't happen, right? Let's say the game's postponed because of the FA Cup semi-final and the games postponed because of the Carabao Cup final are unique, i.e. they don't feature the same team at any point twice. Like, could they all go into 33? Like, yes. So you bring the fixtures forward from 34 to 33 and you move the logical for the Carabao Cup final, as you already said, from 29 to 33 as well. That's the circumstance that would give you 6 fixtures going now.
Yeah, or the Carabao Cup final is postponed all the way to 36.
It's then worth saying, if that was the circumstance that would happen, yes, you would have 12 teams that would double in 33 and you would have 8 teams would blank in 34. You're going to need a chip round there.
That's where you want to use your bench boost in 33 or 36, free hit in 34. Everything you've explained to me so far makes me think whatever that double is where I'll work towards a bench boost, and whatever that blank is, I'll work towards a free hit, with the caveat being, don't know what the mystery chip is, and save my wild card up towards then if I can, or roll 5 transfers during that period.
I, however, think, and it's only Manchester United and Tottenham that I think really changes around it. And it's only think, right? Because we're all working to a new schedule this year. This isn't me telling you what's going to happen. But I think the most likely is what you'd originally said, Suj. Carabao Cup final to 33. So maybe 4 teams double in 33. And then a number of teams blank in 34. And whatever those teams are that blank in 34, double in 36.
Yeah.
And that's probably it. I think the point here is a couple of key points. One, I laid out a circumstance where you could have 6 teams doubling in 33, but it also said it was unlikely.
Yeah,
the most likely best case scenario here, I think, is possibly 8 teams. Now, considering there'll be fixtures against each other, would that be enough for you to use as a bench boost? It's subject to who the teams are, right? That's what you need to think about here. Is that enough? It probably is.
I'd say everything you're explaining to me is enough for me to hold back my chips from 33 to 36 for now.
Yeah. The answer, I think, in terms of the chips to simplify here would be the correct answer for when is the best use for the bench boost, when is the best use for the triple captaincy, when is the best use for the free hit, it is all over that period, 33 to 36, most likely. And it might be that it lands perfectly where you go, I'm going to triple captain 33, free hit 34, bench boost 36. It does mean to use all three over that period that you would, to get them all in, I think you probably got to use the free hit as a shield in the blank. And there is a psychology this year of obviously so many people were successful using it in a double last year. Last year doesn't mean this year, by the way, folks. That swings quite a lot. Like last year, the blank game week, it'll play on people's minds. The blank game week last year, the big blank for the FA Cup quarterfinals, was a disaster, wasn't it? Like it really was. If you had one player returned, you had a green arrow. That's how bad the week was, basically. And that'll play on people's minds this year, where you'll get a narrative where people say, you can't use it in a blank, you've got to use it aggressively in a double. Don't be surprised if it's completely the other way around this year, and you'd be better off maybe using it in a blank. That's a strong possibility. But I think people will psychologically want to play it in a double. Therefore, you're not going to use the triple captaincy and the bench boost in double game weeks later on. So I think it does prompt you to look at solutions. For the record, Erling Haaland's two most likely games to be postponed are both home games. Brighton at home in 29 and Aston Villa at home in 34. In 33, they have Everton away, and in 36, they have Southampton away. Now, under those circumstances, I would suggest either of those, as whatever that lays out as a double game week for Erling Haaland would be fine. It would be perfectly reasonable. And probably better than any single option. But you may also want to be using bench boost / free hit in these same game weeks later on. So in terms of triple captaincy, I will say this to be clear, and this goes for all the chips this year. If people want to use them in single game weeks, I'm far more happier than I would have been in previous years. And in game week 2, Haaland has Ipswich at home. And there's an element of unknown, of course, with it being Ipswich and a promoted team. But we do have a historical of what City can do to these sort of teams in August. And it's normally sort of 4-0-ish. The beauty with game week 2 for Haaland as well is no fixture before, no fixture afterwards. Whereas, even if you look at that double game week later in the season, what if City is still in the Champions League? What if they're still in the FA Cup? Somewhere, there'll be a rest, won't there? So you're not guaranteed those two fixtures at the end. Mo Salah, by the way, as an alternative for harder. Aston Villa away scheduled in 29, Tottenham at home scheduled in game week 34. And if they were to have a double move to 36, their other fixture that week is Arsenal at home. It's not so good. There might be alternatives. Listen, the triple captain we all should have done last year was Mateta, right? Mm-hmm. By the time we get there, there'll be alternatives. But if people said to me now, what do you think is the best triple captaincy in a single game week? I will honestly answer and say I think it's Haaland against Ipswich in game week 2.
I think the other part of why you're happy to have these games available in, these chips used in single game weeks is the fear of getting hurt by people using in the doubles is actually a lot less.
Yeah.
Like,
Great point.
Don't get me wrong. It's like, if I'm like, okay, I haven't got my bench boost and you've got 30 fixtures, I'm like, oh, what are you going to be able to do to me or cover off the free hit? Whereas I can cover off a large chunk of it using my rolled transfers anyway. So is there bench boost I can get because that's 8 extra fixtures if you've got doubles off your whole bench. But free hit wise, if I know what I'm working towards reasonably far in advance and I've rolled my transfers knowing that this problem's going to arise, I can work around it without needing to use a chip potentially. So I think the fear of getting hurt by other people using their chips is a lot less. I'm like you. I'm like, you know what? I get to like game week 14 or 15, and these are completely random game weeks I've chosen. I have no idea what the fixtures are on those game weeks. I look at my team and it's like they're all playing each other. And I've got like City and Arsenal are playing each other, and I've got Tottenham and maybe, I don't know who else, Brighton playing each other or something. Maybe free hit in that week. If I can target 2 or 3 other teams that I think are going to do really well and I've got the evidence of, I could actually see myself doing that. I don't want to overhype what chips are worth. If I can make 10 to 15 points off a free hit in any week, I think I would not feel the FOMO of, do I need to hold it back? I'd feel a lot more comfortable doing it. I think you're right with that.
I think one strategy is an example, and there'll be different ways to play this, but I can see a scenario based on the layout here where people dead end to 34, which would be a blank. Use a triple captaincy in 33, as in a hanging double from the Carabao Cup final postponement. Wildcard 35, bench boost 36. You haven't even used a free hit there. But if you dead end there, you're going to find it difficult to get the balance of the doublers in 33 and then blankers in 34, quite possibly, but not necessarily, because as I said, if it's completely different teams in the two cup competitions, it might even work out. You don't even necessarily need the free hit over that period. I would suggest, though, for those who hear those specific words and then go, I don't need my free hit at the end, use it whenever. That is still likely to be the most useful chip for you in terms of your planning at the end to navigate one problem. Remember, I said last year,
because you can use it offensively and defensively.
And you can make your decision as and when you get there.
But it covers you off both, yeah.
Remember last year, I said when we did the chip strategy, sort of February-ish, March, and I said you will need 3 different teams for the running.
Yep.
That's probably not the case this time. It becomes easier. And also this year as well, you've got the rolling of the transfers. Now, I think the rolling of the transfers is probably not going to be that important in the opening stages of the season. I think people have this magical idea of they're going to roll transfers and not use any till like game week 6 or 7. Like, good luck. You're going to have to absolutely nail it in game week 1. And if you do it, then great. But I think there's going to be a lot of value seeking at the start of the season. I can't really see many people building up to get towards sort of 4 free transfers or so till we get to sort of October, November. But it will be really useful in the second half of the season. I always say tonight, in the first half of the season, seek the value where you can. Take a little bit of a more gamble in terms of the early transfers and stuff. In the late part of the season, you get beyond sort of Christmas into January, and then you got bigger gaps between games. You're worth waiting. An example would be, I mean, let's say Man City get to the League Cup final and the FA Cup quarter final, right? Not improbable, is it? Okay. So they play Nottingham Forest in game week 28. Following weekend's 29. The following weekend's an international break. The following weekend's an FA Cup quarter final. Not going to play in the league for nearly 4 weeks.
And depending who they get in the FA Cup, might be a rotated team. Players will get a long break there.
So who wants to be using an early transfer there, right?
Nah.
You probably don't. So you've got to take your time a little bit more, obviously, in the second half of the season. And I think you'll get more of that, people rolling. It also means I think you can be a little bit more aggressive with your wild card in the second half of the season. That's something we'll obviously talk about once we get towards the winter period. But there'll be more of a case of saying, okay, I'm in a bad position. Yes, I can wild card in January, February, not worrying about the doubles so much. Because if I wild card well, I can build up the bank of transfers in the bank to deal and navigate with the problems better. So if you got to that period, let's say 34 is a blank game week and 33 have doubles. If you can set to 33 really nicely and you've got 4 or 5 transfers in the bank, you don't necessarily need to use the free hit to get out of the problem, right? At that point, it would even maybe be worth 6 or 7 transfers and taking like a -4 or something.
Yeah.
So the game has changed a little bit from that perspective, where there is definitely the opportunity for people to look at things like, yeah, do you know what? Sod it. I'm going to triple captain Haaland in 2. And I think a lot are going to do that. I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying that's an option.
But it's also not wrong. It's absolutely not wrong.
And there's nothing wrong anyway, because it's play it your way. It's always, and I know
exactly.
people, sick in the back of my mouth.
Yeah,
sorry, it's true.
No, but it's 100% true.
But it's true. Do play the game however you want to. And I don't think there's anything from a chip strategy perspective that I could say to you, this is like the optimal way where it's definitely going to be bench boost in 36 and that. Because right now, this is under a new format and we cannot be sure which week the 34 postponements will either be brought forward or moved back. When will we know, James? When will we know? Probably somewhere between 30 and 31. It'd be quite late, probably.
One completely different topic of conversation. Let's take it in a different direction, James. Mystery chip. And the reason I say that is because kind of if I knew what that was, might dictate if I'm more comfortable using my free hit earlier. Like, does that mystery chip give me the option to cover off blanks, for example? Like if it was a unlimited budget,
Yeah,
limitless,
like
for
limitless. Yeah.
example, then I'm like, well, that's basically a free hit with no budget. So I'll use my other free hit earlier in the season, crack on. If it's all out attack, it's completely different as well. So
It's not, can't be all out attack the way they've picked it up. It can't be.
nah. So I mean, any kind of early feeling and thoughts about what it could be? Would it be something that's beneficial and helpful for the second half of the season?
I think the most important message that we genuinely haven't got a clue, but it's something that is going to be able to be used over that period as well. So what I mean is if you use a bench boost or a free hit or a triple captain to start the season, sure, you don't know, but there's another chip coming your way in the second half, and it might be that it replicates. Like if you use the free hit, I don't know, in Game Week 12 is an example I've used in the first half of the season where you might want to look at it. I don't advise that necessarily. I would personally, I'd be keeping the free hit near the end personally. But if you did want to look at that and then limitless was your mystery chip, bingo.
Richard.
Brilliant. I don't know what it is. I've heard people speculate that it could be like that, limitless. It could be like unlimited players per club. Which imagine you've got, just hypothetically, just Manchester City and another team double, for example, and you can go, right, I'll have 7 or 8 of the Man City players or 7 or 8 of the Arsenal players, blanket back 5 of Arsenal defence in when they've got a double or something. Who knows?
Huge.
I've heard
Huge.
people suggest that it could be like pick again. Like you can pick another free hit, bench boost, or triple captain.
That'd be a bit complicated.
Well,
for them,
it
I
might
mean
be
more
that.
than anything else.
Well,
for them to program.
Maybe it would be difficult to program, and if they program it, it's on, and if they don't program it, maybe they've got a backup option. I've heard people suggest that as well. So I think they do know what they're doing. I think they've got a plan A, but I think they've possibly got a plan B as well, which does make me think it could be something like that, where it's choose to have a second bench boost, free hit, or triple captain. You choose what you want. Maybe it will even be a third, like another third wild card even. I don't know. But in any case, it's something that's probably also going to add to helping you at the end of the season. Maybe it'll just be something like, I don't know, 3 captains or something like that. I don't know. It's just loads of stuff it could be, but it's probably stuff you're going to want to use around the double or blank period.
Yeah, no doubt.
If it wasn't something that was related to changing your team, i.e. like a free hit, or like you'd use the example of maybe like a limitless chip, then you're still going to have potentially some problems navigating. That's where the rolling of the transfers become really important. So I think the big one not to use early on, I think, is probably the free hit. I'd hold that back. And if it is limitless, then oh well, maybe you didn't need it quite so much. But then you don't. If that's the case, and you don't need to plan. You could then just use, right, I'll use the free hit in the blank, and I'll use the limitless in the double. You could do it that way.
Yep, I get that.
And something like that would maybe even marginalize the power of a bench boost or a triple captaincy as well. Even we're only speculating, but I think it's fair to say that something will be added in the second half of the season that will probably be useful. That means you can look at using some earlier. And I think the bench boost and the triple captaincy certainly fall into that category.
I feel like limitless is the easiest option. It's the simplest for people to understand. I feel like there could be a chip like best 11. Like imagine if you had a score of 15 and your best 11 score points as opposed to anybody else. That doesn't really help you in terms of navigating any blanks and doubles because it's just your same 11 players that you mentioned, all 15 players. If it's one that involves changing up your team, that could be useful.
Just a point on limitless though. It's not necessarily that the case that you'd go, definitely use it in a double, right? Let me give you a different example of a game week, right? Let's take game week 18. And by the way, this chip won't be in play by then, but I'm just using it as an example. City are at home to Everton. Arsenal are at home to Ipswich. Liverpool are at home to Leicester. Chelsea are at home to Fulham. Newcastle are at home to Villa. Tottenham are at Nottingham Forest. Manchester United are at Wolves. right, even if you just went the top four, City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, with those four home fixtures, you are absolutely going to look at that sort of week. If that happened in the second half of the season, go, well, I can have Saka, Palmer, Foden, Haaland, Salah.
Everyone, fill your boots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, if that was the chip, it's not necessarily that you'd go, I'm definitely going to use it in a double, because it might be, look at Palace last year. We didn't need bloody Limitless to get the Palace assets, did we?
No.
So it might even be that the power of that would still lie in a single game. But just glancing through fixtures, different set of circumstances for you. Game week 30, City at home to Leicester, Arsenal at home to Fulham, Liverpool at home to Everton, Newcastle at home to Brentford, Chelsea at home to Tottenham, Manchester United away to Nottingham Forest. So, like, there's a different example for you. Game week 32, City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea are at home to Palace, Brentford, West Ham, Ipswich, respectively. Tottenham go to Wolves that week as well. In fact, they're looking at 34. All of the top three plus Chelsea and Newcastle have got decent home games as well. So there would be opportunities potentially around it. I've just said 34 might be a blank, didn't I? Well, it almost certainly will be a blank. Those are the sort of fixtures that could move, is those interesting home games, actually.
Mm.
Anyway, for someone who loves to use their bench boost right at the end, I don't think I'm going to need to.
Why are you using it in game week 1? That's my segue to that question.
There's a couple of reasons. There's the bonus now for Tottenham players, although it might be a hindrance by the time Friday and team news
Well,
comes
yeah,
round.
I don't think you're going to get away with it, mate.
Well,
I think you're going to want to make at least
haven't-
one transfer before then. I don't think you're going to end up with 4 Tottenham players.
As I said to you, there's every chance I'd bring Garnacho in anyway.
Yeah,
And that would be for Kulusevski, obviously, under that circumstance if I did it. I've now got the historical of using it last year, and it did go pretty well. But the difference between this year and last year was, last year I had to build it to build a team for a number of weeks afterwards. So the first transfer I made in game week 2 was to bring in Matt Turner. That was my first FPL transfer last year.
Oh, wow.
Matt Turner, to downgrade the money from one of the goalkeepers. I started with Johnson and Pickford. We were both 4.5, I think. But it was like, okay, there's a 4.0 starting keeper. Let's move the money now and start spreading the funds, because my bench was a little bit stronger, perhaps, than what you'd ordinarily have. But I'd built a team to carry me through. And I don't think I wildcarded till December. I don't think so.
No, you left it late. You left it late.
From my memory. But the game week 1, I got off to a flyer, but I didn't have a flyer for the weeks afterwards. This time, I think there's a number of factors at play. One is information, and to be honest, with all these strategies, there's pros and cons. Like, I realized the cons of a wild card in game week 2, which is what this is essentially going to be for me, is I don't have all the information in terms of transfers. There's no data to go on for the new season. I won't have all the detail about stylistics of teams. Like, for example, whatever Chelsea do against Manchester City in game week 1 doesn't give me the answer for what happens in the good run that they've got afterwards. It does allow me to attack some players that I know that would definitely be back and in the team. Like an Ollie Watkins would be the example. Game week 2 doesn't feel right for that because they're playing Arsenal, but there's obviously a good run of fixtures afterwards. It might be that I leave money in the bank to plan to buy Ollie Watkins in free and perhaps, say, stick with Solanke for 2. Then Tottenham have got bad fixtures. There's a number of reasons, and it's not being happy with the team at the start, because there's a lot of information on players, never mind moving, but not even necessarily starting this weekend. I think Watkins falls into that category. Cole Palmer, a lot of the City players, massively. It allows me to not have to have the City players against Chelsea in the unknown and then storm into them for game week 2, obviously against Ipswich. But there were plenty of cons of it. It's more, I actually think the gain of attacking a balanced squad with 15 strong players for game week 1 on the bench boost will benefit me. Plus, my style is patience. I bench boosted in game week 1 last year and yet still didn't wildcard till December. So I know I can manage that sort of period with an extra week's worth of information and then chase some swings, such as Chelsea. Because I might be wildcarding and going and Kunku and Palmer in 2, right? I don't think anyone really wants to do that in 1, but I might well do that sort of thing. And also just got a little bit more information on a couple of teams that I think have got great runs who I don't particularly like in game week 1, such as Fulham and Southampton. are examples of that. Really good runs from game week 2 onwards. I'll have a little information on Ipswich's first fixture. They've got a really good run from game week 3. They said Villa got a good run from game week 3 as well. So look, there's cons of it. It's not perfect. Absolutely.
Right. So,
It's
what you're
absolutely not
saying
perfect.
is I'm going to bench boost because then when I wild card in game week 2, I can buy Fulham, Southampton, and Ipswich.
No. So I can buy
It's what
Manchester
you just
City.
said. Those are the
So I can
teams that I
buy
would like to get a look at in game week 1 because I might
it's
want in game week 2.
it's so I can buy Manchester City, Chelsea, and Aston Villa. I don't include Liverpool in that conversation because I'll obviously have some Liverpool
We're gonna
players
have
in
some
game
for
week 1,
game
so
week 1.
it doesn't really fall that way. But there's still very good fixtures for Liverpool, so that's what I'm looking at. Yeah, he's City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Villa. I also think, like, for example, like I would definitely have 3 Newcastle assets this weekend. As soon as you get that first one out of the way, that run's not quite so good. I don't know if I don't see me having 3 Newcastle going into game week 2, for example. There's loads of pros and cons. I don't actually
Yeah, I
advise.
get
I,
that.
I, I wouldn't advise
I
anybody else to bench boost in game week 1. It's just what I've decided I'm going to do.
yeah, you advise everyone to play it your way. Like when I've looked at my team, when I took Salah out and replaced him with Jota, I had enough money that when I started spreading it around and upgrading players here, there, and everywhere, like just getting rid of that extra 4.0 defender and upgrading it to a 4.5 or a 5, getting rid of Bergval and going to Oscar Bob instead and stuff like that. It looks very bench boostable. It really does. And so I'm not tempted enough to do it. The reason being, like, take your Newcastle assets, right? You're saying they're not great after game week 2. Well, I'm going to have 2, Isak, who's fixture proof, and Lewis Hall is 4.5. He's rotatable with one of my other defenders, so I don't need him every week anyway. So I don't think I'm going to need to get rid of some of these players that have a good game week 1 and then not so much after.
It's also letting me attack things in game week 1 very importantly as well, right? So we've joked about the 4 Tottenham, but obviously I've got 3 Newcastle in there. Obviously I've got 3 Arsenal in there. Obviously I've got 3 Liverpool in there. Like it's a bench boost, but it's a free hit with 15 players, isn't it? And a couple of other players that are under consideration who I think people are largely overlooking because their fixtures are not great. Like someone like Bumo in game week 1, for example, is a strong consideration for me. He's in there at the moment, right? You look at their fixtures 2 to 5, I wouldn't want him. So it's allowed me to look at things like that. So yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't even sound bullish about it. I just think I'm so likely to do it that even if I had a couple of injuries now, obviously if I get anyone injured, I'm not having the 4 Tottenham. But as I already said, there's every chance I'll put Garnacho in for Kulusevski anyway. There's that. There's United at home to Fulham. Fulham are fine, but it's still a good fixture to go and attack, opening doors. So the teams that I'm really avoiding, Chelsea, City, Villa in 1, I'm coming right back to in 2. And that's where I think the money is going to be in game weeks 2 and 3 is going to go towards Chelsea, City and Villa, and allows me to pick enablers from teams like Fulham, Southampton to balance it off. And still have Liverpool, obviously, but probably not Salah.
I really need you to keep your 4 Spurs.
To be honest, I intend to. I'm the sort of stubborn idiot that even if I did hear like 15 minutes before deadline that Garnacho starting, I might not move it.
Yeah.
I might still stick with it.
We don't do clickbaity headlines, but Spurs fan content creator in mud after bench boost fails in game week 1. Come on, Nico.
That's fine.
But I
You
also
can
want
have
you
all
to do
that.
well. Like I only want you to do badly because it will get a lot of clicks and views. I want you to do well because I like you, but still, it would be funny. And this is a game to have fun
This
in.
time last year, I came to the conclusion pretty much now that I was going to bench boost in game week 1, whereas I've been pretty clear that I wanted to do this now for a few weeks. It's not like suddenly something that's popped into my head. I've been pretty set on this for a while. And the reason I'm doing it is to try and give me the best opportunity of winning FPL in game week 1, because there's not many other people are going to do it. Hopefully it gets me off to a great start. Yes, a wild card in 2. Yes, I realize the pitfalls of doing that because there's plenty of other weeks that people will prefer. And I think all of them, to touch on a few of them, have their pros and their cons. So I just want to look at a few usage, which I think are worth looking at. I kind of a little bit inspired to look at it as a little bit of a continuation of stuff that Mark Southerns was discussing on Black Box. because he was looking at doing it in the international breaks, which we know is a popular time, right? Purely, if anything, I know it's kind of over-egged about all increasing value over that period. It doesn't
Yep.
happen any different, really. But you do have 2 weeks of thinking time, and there's certain stuff to learn. I mean, one beauty of game week 4, for example, i.e., pre-game week 4, is transfer window closes. And then, if anyone gets injured on international duty, you can deal with that sort of problem. And you've got 2 weeks. Admittedly, it's only like 3 weeks worth of data. But I thought it was just kind of highlighting the teams that you may want to target if you wildcard in game week 4. So some of them similar to what I'll be looking at. So I think Villa, Liverpool, you're still going to be in and around the Chelsea run, but obviously they come into a bad run from game week 7. So you've missed the start of it almost. West Ham, I think, come into a little bit of a better run. Surge. Brentford in 6, Ipswich 7. We'd highlighted that as a possible entry point for West Ham. Everton coming towards the end of what is a challenging opening 4 with the Villa and Tottenham away games. Yes, it's Villa away in 4, but then their really good run starts from game week 5. I think Palace, Southampton, Ipswich, as I'd mentioned, maybe Manchester United. None of the big clubs have it absolutely terrible over that period. The annoying thing, I think, the biggest thing of 4 is Manchester City and Arsenal. So obviously you're wildcarding into Arsenal away to Tottenham and then away to Manchester City. And obviously City have the Arsenal game in 5 and then Newcastle away in 6 as well. So because of that doesn't feel right to me. What's a wild card? You're going to want Arsenal, right? And you're wildcarding into the period where Arsenal got Tottenham and City away. And yet you want to balance it because in 6, Arsenal have Leicester at home and they have Southampton at home. And then Bournemouth away in 8.
Roll 1 before, 2 after. You can come out of 6 with 3 transfers and get a few of them then, potentially.
Yeah, of course you could. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you're wildcarding in 4,
I mean,
you're only
carrying your
rolling
rolled over
one,
transfers
aren't
through
you?
a wild card is huge.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have identified game week 3 as well. And that feels a little bit better in terms of, I think, attacking Chelsea as well, because then you're only missing like the Wolves away game, for example. But yeah, it's that I don't like about the first international break is you're probably not going perhaps as big as you should do on City and Arsenal. Game week 8 is a different problem because if you look at a period of say 8 to 12, then there's a load of the bigger clubs are coming into really tough fixtures. So top of my ticker from the second international break, game weeks 8 to 12, Everton, Manchester United, Brentford, Leicester, Ipswich, Fulham. That's the top 6. Then Manchester City, then Palace, Wolves. So of the top 9, you've only got City and United that you would expect to finish in that top 9 who have got really good fixtures. Chelsea, that's walking into the period of like Liverpool, Newcastle, Man United, Arsenal. So that's like a complete bin. Liverpool over that period have got Chelsea, trip to Arsenal, also a game with Villa. Arsenal got Liverpool, Newcastle, Chelsea in a row 9 to 11. So although by that point, you obviously got a lot more understanding in terms of what you've seen so far, you're not attacking anything from a fixture perspective. And I don't know if these Chelsea players have done great. Like it's the end of their run. You're more cutting it. So more of a reason to wildcard here, I think, in 8, rather than what you're attacking would be, right, get rid of, say, your Chelsea, Liverpool, maybe your Arsenal players. But this is what I've said to you several times. It's not like, oh, okay, now it's great for Tottenham, Newcastle, Villa instead.
There's no
It's not.
big swings.
It's
They
just
don't
Manchester
exist.
United. City's still okay from that period. And also when we look game week 12, which is the third international break. This is a little bit better, I think, arguably, because you're hitting before a new swing is about to happen. It's when Brighton come into really good fixtures. You'll have a little bit of understanding of how Wolves might perform over that period. Villa and Chelsea are 2 teams that show up quite well over this sort of period, 12 to 16, but I don't like that they play each other in 13. Arsenal's fixtures are much better by this point, and then Newcastle's come back into being better as well. But again, game week 13, got Liverpool, Man City playing each other.
Yep.
And once you get into December, you're going to want bits of those too. So if you jump on further to like game week 16, which is further on, I like this sort of period more because the teams that show at the top of the ticker, and
Very
this will be
green
coming off of
fixtures, are
bad
they?
periods. Wolves, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City, Tottenham are the top five I've got on there. And you've got Liverpool not far below that either. And that feels like
Yeah,
more
that
like a
period
period to
feels very
attack.
like just visually looking at the fixture, which if Nico has on the screen, it's just very green at the top, and that's a very clear indication of good fixtures for a prolonged period for the top teams.
Yeah, it swings like I've said this so many times. It swings where the majority of the best teams go into a difficult run together. That's because there's groups of them playing each other. Like Arsenal play Liverpool and then play Newcastle, for example. They're all playing each other, and that creates a little bit of a problem. One against that a little bit is Tottenham, because Tottenham play City in 12 at the Etihad. And that's part where I'd mentioned 12 as a possible for a free hit. But Tottenham's fixtures either side of 12 are quite good, for example. This is also why I've said that I would either be using a wild card early, or I could see me wait until this period at the end towards
16,
16,
17, yeah.
18. Because even with 16, Suj, although it looks much better as kind of a green period for the majority of these teams, you've still got in 17, Tottenham play Liverpool and City go to Villa. So there's
Hmm.
still a couple of challenging fixtures in there over that period. And that's why I don't even mind the idea of like a free hit 16, where you've got some really good fixtures in there, and then maybe even wildcard 18
Yep.
to deal with the problem. The problem with
Wild
18,
card in 16 and free hit in 17.
the problem with
And then
18 is
back
it's
to your wild card
it's
team.
it's Boxing Day, and I know a lot of people can't deal with that problem of
Yeah, yeah,
wildcarding
yeah.
on
That's a
Boxing Day.
headache.
But yeah, I think the more I've looked at it, I wouldn't want to be wildcarding pretty much probably between 8 and around about 13, 14. It'd either be really early on or really late. So it's also pushed me into the idea of the bench boost in one, because I think all of us are probably going to have to suffer a little bit of pain through the October, November period. The good thing about that period is it really does make some of the so-called smaller clubs more interesting over that period, where you'll want to go and attack them, the likes of your Wolves, Brentford, Everton, Fulham, Ipswich, etc. We're going to want to look at some of these teams. We'll have to.
Yep. Cool. Makes sense. Good, good. Very useful. Excuse me. Very useful pod, James, I think, because it really sheds light on how much simpler chip strategy is this year. And anything that opens up the game to a wider variety of strategies and ways that people play it makes it always more interesting. It isn't great when we're all on the same template and we're all following the same chip strategy. If you want to jump in the comments on YouTube, let us know what you're currently thinking for your wildcard week or any other chip strategies that you may potentially be thinking about. It'll be interesting to see what you guys think about that. Wherever you're listening to the pod, you can like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And if you want to support the show, it's patreon.com/Planet FPL. Additional shows every day, prize league, Slack community, video content, James's fixture planner spreadsheet, basic plus, intermediate plus, advanced plus. We didn't shout this out yesterday. You get FPL team premium access, so you can save your strategies as well. We've got to give a shout out to Pete and that website as well. So many good reasons to want to come and support the show. And if nothing else, it just keeps the lights on. So we'd love to have you as part of Patreon as well. Rest of the week, James. Tomorrow, I'm off. Clayton's back in the hot seat. You guys are talking about captaincy and rotations. I think that's going to be super interesting because a lot of people might be put off one of the two of the premiums thinking, actually, yeah, I'm not going to captain him, or am I going to captain him? So we're looking forward to listening to that pod. Q&A on Thursday. That'll be fun.
Maybe.
Final drafts on Friday.
It's going to be fun
Final
because it's going to
drafts
be
on
me,
Friday.
you, and Clayton together on the pod
Indeed,
publicly
it
for the
will.
first time. So,
Yeah, looking forward to that. And a bunch of Patreon content as well, dead team, differential teams, and all of our team reveals and stuff like that for the rest of the week as well. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening, and you'll be notified as soon as that content goes live. Otherwise, stay safe, look after yourselves. Ciao for now.
thanks everyone. Play it your way. Cue music, please, matchup.